2023, jazz composer and tenor sax legend Wayne Shorter passed away, and Adam Neely made a really nice video analysing his ballad Infant Eyes. It reminded me of how much I used to love listening to it on his album Speak No Evil. After a few of my subscribers suggested harmonising a more modern tune and mentioned Wayne Shorter and Infant Eyes, I thought, well, it's the perfect time to arrange it. This arrangement is going to be for tenor sax solo in honour of Wayne Shorter, plus 4 or 5 reeds. But I thought of it quite orchestrally, thinking that it could quite easily be expanded for a big band or a large jazz ensemble. So this is going to be a bit of a funny arrangement, as I'm cramming in a lot of ideas into one chorus. But this is just going to allow me to show you quite a few textures, techniques and harmonizations in a short space of time. By the way, these examples are played by real people. That's Patricio on the reeds, Marius on the drums, and Gabriel on the bass. So let's get into it. It starts off nice and simply. I have the solo tenor sax playing the melody ad-lib, and the texture starting thinly in the accompaniment. Bar by bar, I thicken the texture by adding another instrument on a different pitch. I react to the unexpected and delightful harmony in bar 4 by having a ripple-like motif played by the reeds. The melody is so dramatic here with its large leap upwards, so it's nice to react to it in the accompaniment. To match the drama of the leap upwards, I have the accompanying lines play a triplet with a rest on beat 1. I allow the energy of the melody and motif to dissipate by writing a descending bass line at a different syncopated rhythm for the bass clarinet and bass. In terms of harmony, I'm just following the chords that are in Wayne Shorter's original piece. In bar 4 for the ripple motif, I'm just using the octatonic or half-whole scale, which is the most commonly associated scale with the 13 flat 9 chord. On a more modern modal tune like this, it's more typical to use the provided scales for accompaniment figures, so you keep the sound of the harmony that the composer intended originally. And in general, on these modern tunes, functional harmony like 2-5-1s are less used, so sticking to the mode can sound fresh and more in keeping with the other material. For the second phrase, I resolve the tension of bar 4 with a nice G-flat major 9 chord, nicely stacked in thirds. To give the start of the new phrase a little momentum, I utilise another half-beat rest on beat 1. This is a nice voicing with a minor second in the upper 2 accompaniment voices. As they are below the melody, it doesn't sound dissonant. Then the texture is thinned to the end of the phrase. You may have noticed that I didn't place the bass clarinet on the root note F here. This is to avoid the chord sounding thin. We have an F in the melody and the bass is playing F, so I didn't feel like I needed the root to be reinforced again. I placed the bass clarinet on the 5th, C, and then it gets to move nicely upwards to the next chord, where everything else is moving down. The next few bars are some of the most climactic in the whole tune, so I changed the texture to a thickened line or soli texture by having the solo sax join the ensemble. I increased the tension on this phrase by having a syncopated pedal note in the bass clarinet and bass. This leads to another large leap and dramatic moment in the melody where I quicken the ripple motif and write trills in the accompaniment. I have harmonized the melody mostly with constant structures or diatonic planing, as this keeps the sound of the mode and scale. It also has a nice tense modern sound. The ripple motif again just uses the scale native to the chord, and in this case it's an E-flat Phrygian. Similar to the previous ripple moment, I tease out the tension by writing a rhythmically less stable bass line. After writing this section, I couldn't resist adding another line which I thought would work quite well, especially in a larger ensemble. It's a rising line that has a different rhythm to the rest of the ensemble, building to that climactic moment where it joins the ensemble just below the melody. Momentarily it does go above the melody, and this is okay, and it would be even better if done with a completely different timbre to the melody. For instance, if this was for big band and the brass section were playing the melody in harmony, then this line would be marvellous with unison winds or saxes. In the next few bars I react to the ripple motif by allowing the tension to ebb away slowly by using the triplets again from earlier in the piece. Then I allow the texture to thin out to the end of the phrase. I placed a chromatic A under this chord to get from the B flat sus to the A flat minor 9, as this gives us a little bit of forward momentum. In a typical jazz tune, one might use a tritone sub here, harmonizing it with an A7 flat 5. But when I tried this, it sounded too functional again. I'll show you what I mean. As is. And now with an A7 flat 5. Let me know in the comments what one you prefer. Going back to the A section, I changed things up again, alternating the texture between an ad-lib solo instrument with accompaniment and a harmonized passage. It's a good way of keeping a ballad exciting. Gil does this to great effect in his arrangement Lament from Miles Ahead. I also used this a lot on my arrangement of You Go to My Head, which is on this channel already. In this passage I use a lot of the techniques that I usually talk about on this channel. I utilize diatonic planing, and I make sure to write an interesting bass line. The bass clarinet starts off simply and moves in contrary motion to the climax of this phrase. On the climax, the bass clarinet plays the third, so that when it arrives on the root A, it is a little more surprising. I altered the ripple motif slightly here by having it in a higher tessitura. It goes above the melody, which is fine, especially if it were orchestrated for a different timbre such as a brass section. I do have some consecutive fifths in the outer voices here, but I don't mind them in this case. For the last phrase, I have another entry on beat 1 and, this time writing in another trill on a semiquaver triplet, which is harmonized by all of the accompaniment. I think it sounds really nice, and it ties in with the other half beat rests throughout. Well, I hope you enjoyed that look at a more modern tune, using more of a modal perspective rather than a functional jazz harmony mindset. I think there's some interesting things to think about in here, especially with the use of texture in arranging and how to keep things stimulating throughout. Well, I hope you enjoyed that look at a more modern tune, using more of a modal perspective rather than a functional jazz harmony mindset. Thanks to Patricio for the amazing work on the reeds, and Marius on the drums, and my bass regular Gabriel Casaro. And thanks to Wayne Shorter for writing such a beautiful tune, and let me know in the comments how you think you would orchestrate something like this. By the way, if you're really into this stuff, you can buy the PDF or my intermediate workbook from my Ko-fi page. The intermediate workbook is especially for keen beans who want to take a deep dive into my rules and thinking when harmonizing passages in a soli texture. It even has the answers in the back.